In the rural village of Kamwasa, nestled deep within the heart of Kenya, lived a proud and respected man named Bwana Juma. He was a man of stature tall, stern, with a booming voice that echoed authority. A successful farmer and village elder, Bwana Juma had 2 children, his son Makali, and his daughter Aching. To anyone visiting the family home, the love Bwana Juma had for his son was unmistakable. Makali was the golden child, smart, confident, and ambitious. Juma had big plans for him. He sent Makali to the best schools in Nairobi, made sacrifices to pay his tuition, and spoke of him as the future of the family legacy. Aching, on the other hand, was expected to stay home, cook, clean, and wait until a suitable husband came knocking. Though she was just as intelligent, perhaps even more, so her father never entertained the idea of sending her to school past the age of 14. But Baba Aching had once pleaded, "I want to study. I want to become a doctor." Juma scoffed. "Your place is in the home. Let Makali bring honor to this family. You'll bring honor with children and a respectful husband." That was the first of many heartbreaks for Aching. Still, she didn't give up easily. Secretly, she borrowed textbooks from the village school, studied at night using a small kerosene lamp, and even helped local children with their homework. Her mother, Mama Atino, quietly supported her, slipping her books and money whenever she could. Meanwhile, Makali was growing arrogant. He failed several courses in university, but hid the truth. He spent money recklessly, partied often, and came home only when he needed more funds. But Bwana Juma remained blind to it all. "He's just young," he would say. "Boys make mistakes." One day, tragedy struck. Mama Atino fell seriously ill. The doctors in the city demanded immediate surgery. Aching rushed to her father, begging for help. "We need to get Mama to Nairobi," she cried. "I can accompany her. I've studied first aid. I can help. Please, Baba, let's act quickly." But Juma shook his head. "I can't send her to the city. Makali is already asking for more school fees. That's the priority." Aching stared at him, stunned. "You're choosing him over Mama's life? She recover, she's strong. My son's education is more important." Mama Atino died 2 weeks later. At the funeral, Aching didn't cry. Her tears had dried the moment her father chose tuition over life. That was the day something inside her changed. She knew she couldn't count on her father for anything, not love, not support, not justice. And so, she made a decision. She would rise not to seek his approval, but to prove to herself and the world that she didn't need his favor to become someone extraordinary. Zuri sat silently on the edge of her bed, watching the moonlight filter through the small window of her cramped room. The events of the past week had left her hollow. Her father, Baba Jomo, had made it clear his heart, his legacy, and his fortune belonged to her brother Cato. Since Mama's death, Zuri had tried tirelessly to hold the family together. She cooked, cleaned, and even postponed her university dreams to care for Cato while Baba worked. Yet, it was Cato who got the expensive education abroad. It was Cato who was handed the keys to their family business, and when Zuri had finally asked her father if he could support her dream to open a small tailoring shop, Baba Jomo had simply said, "That money is for your brother's future. You are a girl you will marry, and your husband will provide." That sentence echoed in her ears like a curse. "I am not just someone's future wife," she had whispered under her breath that day. "I am Zuri," but no one had heard. Even Cato, her younger brother, had begun to treat her like she was invisible. He swaggered around the house, boasting about business deals and overseas contacts. When Zuri asked him once for help to print some flyers for her small seamstress service, he laughed and said, "Sister, you should focus on finding a rich husband, not wasting time with threads and fabric." She had smiled, then, but her heart cracked a little more. That night, something shifted inside her. If the world saw her as just a shadow, she would become her own light. Zuri began working at dawn and sleeping at midnight. She saved every coin she earned from sewing torn school uniforms and mending market dresses. By day, she smiled at customers. By night, she watched online tutorials on design, marketing, and finance, using borrowed internet at a neighbor's home. Weeks turned into months. Her hands bled from needlework, but her resolve grew stronger. She developed her own unique style, traditional African patterns fused with modern design. People began to take notice. Her small room turned into a buzzing studio, and word spread across their village and nearby towns. Clients came from as far as Nairobi to buy her custom designs. Still, Zuri didn't stop. She applied for a women's entrepreneurship grant, hosted by an international NGO. She didn't tell her father or Kato when she was selected as a finalist. She traveled alone, presenting her designs to a room full of investors. Her voice trembled, her hands shook, but her passion blazed through. Weeks later, Zuri received an email. She had won. The grant included not only funding, but a 6-month mentorship program abroad. It was more than she had ever dreamed. For the first time in her life, she felt seen, validated, powerful. When she came home with the news, Baba Jomo didn't speak. He stared at her like she was a stranger. Kato scoffed and muttered, "Must be some charity thing for poor girls." But Zuri didn't need their approval anymore. As she packed for her journey, she left a letter on the kitchen table. It read, "You taught me I was just a girl, but life taught me I am so much more. I'm not leaving in anger, I'm leaving to build something that was never offered to me here, my future." 6 years passed. Zuri returned to Kenya, not as the quiet girl who once begged for scraps of support, but as a celebrated entrepreneur, fashion mogul, and a proud advocate for women's independence. Her brand, Zuri Styles, had become a sensation across Africa, blending heritage with haute couture. She had opened boutiques in Nairobi, Lagos, and even Paris. But the trip back home wasn't for celebration. It was closure. When she stepped out of the airport, the air smelled of old memories. Of dust, mango trees, and dreams once denied. The village hadn't changed much, but the people had. Everywhere she walked, strangers whispered her name. Little girls looked at her with wide, curious eyes, and mothers pointed with admiration. Zuri smiled softly, but stayed focused. She wasn't back to be applauded. She had come to confront her past and rewrite its ending. She arrived at her father's house just before sunset. It looked smaller than she remembered. The gate, once strong and proud, now hung loosely on rusted hinges. She knocked. A frail voice from inside called, "Come in." Baba Jomo sat hunched on an old wooden chair, a worn-out blanket around his shoulders. He looked nothing like the powerful, feared man who had ruled their house with silent pride. "Zuri?" he asked, blinking in disbelief. "Yes, Baba," she replied. Tears welled in the old man's eyes. He reached for his cane, tried to stand, but stumbled. Zuri moved swiftly and caught him, just as he had once caught her when she tripped as a child. "I heard about you. I see you on TV sometimes. Everyone says you are great now. I worked hard," she said simply, "and life rewarded me." Baba Jomo lowered his gaze. "I was wrong." Zuri didn't reply. Kato entered moments later. He looked worn out, older than his age, bitterness etched into his face. "You've come to gloat," he sneered. "No," Zuri said. "I've come to offer you a job." Kato's face twisted in confusion. "What?" Zuri turned to her father. "I opened a foundation for girls like me, who are told they're not enough, who are told they're just daughters. I need someone to manage operations in this region. Someone who knows the land, the people. I'll pay fairly." "You'd trust him?" Baba Jomo asked. "I trust myself," Zuri replied. Silence fell in the room. Then Kato laughed bitterly. "After all, I said, all I did." Zuri looked at him, calm and resolute. "Yes, because I will never be like those who tried to keep me small." The next day, Zuri stood before a crowd of young women at the opening of her new training center. Her voice rang through the warm air. When the world tells you you're not enough, rise anyway. When even your own family says your dreams are foolish, dream louder. And when life shuts a door, learn to build your own house. She turned to see her father and brother standing in the crowd, silent, humbled, but present. Zuri had not just returned victorious, she had returned as a legacy. 5 years later, Zuri stood on the stage of the African Women's Impact Summit in Accra, Ghana, dressed in a vibrant Ankara gown designed by her own team. She looked out at a sea of young women, each holding notebooks, phones, and dreams. She had become more than a fashion icon. She was a movement. The Zuri Foundation had opened 17 learning centers across East and West Africa, training over 10,000 girls in entrepreneurship, digital literacy, public speaking, and financial independence. Dozens of her graduates had launched their own businesses. One even opened a tech startup that landed international investment. In the audience sat political leaders, business executives, and journalists, but Zuri only focused on one section. The rows filled with teenage girls from rural villages. Girls who used to walk barefoot to school, who had been told to marry at 15, who were now learning how to build empires. I am not extraordinary, Zuri said into the mic. I am simply what happens when a girl is no longer told to wait her turn. The audience erupted in applause. Later that evening, a reporter asked her, "What would you say to your younger self?" Zuri smiled thoughtfully. "I'd tell her that pain doesn't define you. That being overlooked is not a life sentence. And that one day, the very voice they tried to silence will be the one the world leans in to hear." Back in Kenya, Baba Jomo had passed peacefully, holding a photo of his daughter at her Paris fashion show. Cato had become the regional director of the foundation, known for his humility and work ethic. He often said, "My sister saved me from myself." Zuri never married, not because she didn't believe in love, but because she had fallen in love with her purpose. And as the sun set on the summit, she watched a young girl step up to the podium. Nervous, trembling, Zuri reached out and gently touched her shoulder. "Speak," she whispered. "The world is finally listening."